Sure. Do you need, when I say you, your group, to get this passed, or let me rephrase this, if it was to be passed, do you need unanimous consent of the 3 trustees? And then a follow-up, if they pass it, do you need unanimous approval from the county commissioners, or is it simple majority on each one?
The answer to both is no, as far as I know, but I think we'll have to ask the prosecuting attorney's opinion on that, but I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you.
And again, keep in mind, the county commissioners are requesting that it be approved. Official certification would take place at the state level. They would review the application made by the community and the county, and then would certify. But the state could also choose not to certify if we did not meet the requirements of the ORC.
Thank you.
Catherine, that would be after the commissioners look for it.
Jack Flume, resident of Sycamore Township. I got a couple of questions. One, I guess is administratively. The last time we got together, we agreed that this would be a public hearing and a public meeting, I guess. Do you intend to pass legislation or to act on legislation today?
Yes.
That leads to the obvious question, what is the legislation? It must be prepared. And in addition, Mr. Holt talked about a survey that was done to determine whether or not this area qualifies. Do you have a copy of that survey?
Great, I think we do have a copy of it, yes.
Yeah, I have the resolution Mr. Miller and I prepared along with the help of HCPC for your consideration. I have several CRA areas, as well as their housing study. And when you're ready, I can go through the legislation for your consideration.
I have to say, we were under the impression that there would not be legislation approved today, and we're still finalizing the data for the survey, so we're a little confused about that, actually.
Okay. Well, so that's what I want to do.
I think Mr. Blanton just maybe summarized what I was going to say too. I mean, the last time we were together, I used the word big deal. This is a big deal. I mean, the whole project is a big deal. And this CRA, the application for the CRA and the tax abatement is part of that. It would seem to be prudent. I'm assuming that neither one of the trustees, 3 trustees, have read the report. It would be prudent, seems to me, to be able to read and to discuss the findings of the report before you adopt any legislation. It's already clear that the community did not initiate the application, the developer did. One of these slides here says that the community is supposed to initiate it, but I would be, I would caution, I guess, the trustees, maybe if you accept that, not to act on any legislation until we, all of us, and especially yourselves, and your attorney, Mr. Miller, have had a chance to read the report that certifies or supports the conclusion that this area is distressed and as you use the words from the ORC, the area must include specific evidence of disinvestment located there. Now,
Jack, can
I'm not quite sure the number.
Jack, let me interrupt you a minute. I think that the term distressed was used in error by Greg at our last meeting. I don't think that there's anything that says in the CRA process that this is, quote, distressed property.
Let me read it.
So I'll tell you,
The
the
exact
word
quote.
distressed was thrown out, and I ran with it, and that was my fault
Well,
for running with the word distressed because that was used. The
okay,
word distressed is
we-
not in CRA.
We accept your apology. I've used the wrong words as well. But the point is, whether we use blighted, distressed, or, and I'll quote specific evidence of disinvestment in the structures located there. Now, let's use the word disinvestment then. I believe that it's a record somewhere along the way in the Business Courier Journal or wherever, that property was purchased over a period of 4 or 5 years. The first purchases began to go about, and that I believe Mr. Fusero made some statements during the hearings last fall that he probably paid somewhere past $10 million for the total number of properties there. That's hardly specific evidence of disinvestment. If we want to use the word disinvestment, that's fine, instead of blighted or distressed or anything. when somebody steps up and pays $10 million for some property, that's not evidence of disinvestment. So again, going back to the report that Mr. Blanton has referred to, and he says that isn't really complete yet, I would caution the trustees, and I use the word prudent, it's not prudent to vote on legislation of this magnitude of project without having all of the information available to the public beforehand as well as to yourselves. Has Mr.
Just for
Connor, Mr.
clarification.
Weedman, Mr. LaBarbera, have any of you read the report?
I have.
Mr. Flynn, I just want to make sure that, I didn't say that it wasn't complete, it's that we were under the impression that there's still some work that we were gonna do.
Right,
But,
so here's, let me just go through this, is where we're at. Their housing report, the area you see on the screen right here, the housing report completed reflects this area right here. Okay, that is Exhibit A to the resolution, and it documents the condition of some of the houses. At the previous meeting, you had discussed potentially expanding the area to this, or even this. So if you decide to go with this one here, the second one, the third one, HCDC will need to amend their Exhibit A housing study to include this particular area. And as far as the area itself, you can make it as big and wide as you want. It doesn't necessarily have to be what you see here. The question then becomes, what area do you want to incentivize for investment in the future?
Okay, I have a couple other questions or comments,
Sure.
if that's okay. I would posit that the condition of the present structures, whatever this report says, it's a report that was done in the past, Harry, I guess in the past couple of months, was a field survey. Yeah, so it reflects basically the existing condition. I would say whatever conditions are out there that are I must use the word distressed, that violate zoning codes in any way at all, or exhibit specific evidence of disinvestment, have been self-inflicted. This property has been owned by Capital Investment for a number of years, and tenants have been moved out, and the property has been ready for demolition and construction of a new project. So it doesn't seem to me that the conditions that existed in the past, let's say 6 months or so, reflect the actual evidence of disinvestment. They rather reflect the fact that the property hasn't been maintained well because it's been vacant and it isn't producing any income. So that's why I think it's important for us, for all of us, to be able to read the report to determine exactly what those conditions are and who caused those conditions.
So I have the housing study here, I can go through briefly if you would like.
Okay, then the other question I have is, there's, and I appreciate the PowerPoint presentation, that was very helpful, is that the tax abatement may extend from anywhere up to 100%. So what tax abatement are we talking about? Are we talking about 100%?
I think in order for them to achieve 100%, correct me if I'm wrong, that they have to have some kind of agreement with the school district.
on the commercial, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, well, that was my next question. Those two are linked together. We haven't seen anything, evidence that there is a school district agreement, although Mr. Fuseros stated last time that we were here that there was. I think that we should be able to see that agreement. It's a public document, public entity. And then secondly, I assume that document will define the tax abatement, the amount of the tax abatement. Is it 50%, 75%, 100%?
So a lot of those questions can be answered through the legislation if you want me to go through that, or.
Yeah, that's fine, that's fine, go
I have
ahead.
the housing study here, we can go through, it's however you would want to proceed.
Okay,
Go ahead,
I'll finish my comments.
Fine, go ahead.
I would urge the trustees not to adopt any legislation today because of the lack of information that's been provided beforehand. We, the residents of the area as well as of the township, haven't had a chance to look at this at all. And that's a good way to conduct business in the public sector in moving ahead on something that is almost a last-minute discussion here. So I would urge the trustees to not act on legislation until all the information has been available to the public at large. Thank you.
Greg?
Can I ask a couple questions?
Let him go ahead with his presentation. He may answer your questions in the process.
No, this is a better understanding of HCDC, not for the specific
Okay,
project.
go ahead.
So I don't mean to be rude to you guys.
First, thank you for coming. HCDC is something that I did not know about, and I think several residents would like to know about it. So I wanted to ask some basic questions on the process of working with the local municipality. So it was in your presentation that it sounded like the community would designate an area. How long has HCDC been around?
Since 1983.
Okay, so has HCDC worked with Sycamore Township in the past?
We've definitely worked with Sycamore Township, but not, I don't think on the CRA.
So have you worked with any townships in Hamilton County on or creating CRS?
Oh, yeah. It's in the presentation. There's 4 examples in there.
And how is that done? Is that part of the township planning process?
Well, the township decides themselves how they go about deciding to do it. It could be part of the planning process, it could be the administration, whatever they decide to do. But they basically work with us to define the boundaries, what kind of abatements they want to give, so.
Okay, so the township would do that internally, not in conjunction with HCDC?
Oh, in conjunction. We work with them to try to help them through the process. We're just sort of their consultants.
Okay. And that leads to the next part of it, is the analysis of the properties identified.
Right.
One of the questions that I have as a taxpayer in my township is the abatement and the numbers that go along with that. So is that something that HCDC helps local municipalities calculate?
So they determine what kind of percentages they want to give. On an individual project, we would look at it and calculate what are the tax breaks, what's being abated, what's the amounts.
Okay, so the township would kind of decide what percentage they would want, okay, because I was told differently at a previous meeting. So the township would kind of decide what percentage, and I've not seen any numbers, and I think this is what Mr. Flume was inquiring about as a taxpayer. You know, I have no idea what a 50% or 100% or no abatement means to the tax revenue to the township. So I don't know if that's part of Greg's presentation, but there's other areas in Sycamore Township that need a CRA, in my opinion. But I just wanted, and I appreciate you coming here, I wanted to get a better understanding of the process.
So just to answer your first question, we can't really calculate what the impact would be to the township until we have a specific project.
Sure.
We don't know what the valuations would be, what would be abated, who's gonna request it, so.
But you guys have
This-
software.
This initial process is just to establish the area.
Understand.
And then an individual property owner have to apply after it's certified by the state.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Okay. Greg, do you want to add anything?
Just a couple of things real quickly. With respect to the process and the CRA and the term disinvestment, respectfully, Mr. Flynn, he has no idea what he's talking about when he speaks to disinvestment. If you look at those properties, whether before we bought them or after them, obviously there had not been an investment in that area. It's the only kind of portion of the whole commercial sector along Kenwood Road that has not seen reinvestment or new investment. So from a perspective of disinvestment, absolutely, that's what those properties represented, and it's clear to anybody who can look at those and see that that is in a commercial corridor, and it's really the only parcel along there, or parcels that have not been redeveloped. So clearly, to anybody who looked at those properties, it's obvious that there has been disinvestment there, because the highest and best use is certainly different than the 4 and 5 families that are currently there that are functionally obsolete in terms of what they provide. And so I think it's clear, and again, I think the board understands this, and it's you trustees that are making the decision, not the public. So I appreciate, your understanding what the investment vehicle is in this case, what it's used for, which is the infrastructure and the public parking for the development. And again, It's a vehicle that is similar to, though not identical to the TIF. But, you know, any of these projects that have that public component generally have this kind of financing, and you folks are well aware of that.
Mr. DeSarno, in all honesty, you're going against the will of the people. You know, we've talked about this development over and over again with meetings, 30 hours of meetings, 8 meetings, and there's no question, yeah, develop something there, but not to the scope that you want it to be developed. It's too massive. The traffic study with 9 lanes of traffic is ludicrous. There's 4 lanes of traffic there. Just downsize it, and you'll get your TIF money.
Okay. Greg, you wanna go ahead and run through this?
Well, I'll just show you the housing study really quickly. They sampled 8 properties in this area right here. That's exhibit B right here, so I'm sorry, I apologize. This area right here, there's 8 properties that were sampled, and the results of that sample are attached here. They rated the roof, the fascia, the gutters, the downspouts, siding, doors, windows, et cetera, et cetera. And it came up with what they call condition, desirability, and usefulness, and it's a number ranging from 1 to 1 is poor, 5 is excellent. And you can see overall we've got 2.9, 2.4, 2.6, 2.1, 1.9, 2. Anyway, so you're kind of right in the middle of that sliding scale. They went on further to take photographs of the various properties, showing the conditions of them. It shows you which properties they took a look at. Now, I would leave it up to HCDC, Harry, and Catherine to explain some of the methodology behind the housing study and why the numbers really work, because this was done by them, not us. But, you know, if anybody's been here a long time, I can tell you, being here 20 years now, these properties look the same and have looked the same ever since I've been here. So, as far as, are these properties disinvested? Well, they really haven't been improved beyond the time that I've got into them. So that's just my take on it as your staff perspective. I don't know if Harry and Catherine have anything else to add to it. That's your housing study that was done for the area shown here.
Has anybody seen the Taco Bell site lately?
You're out of order, Mr. Gordon. Go ahead, I'd like to hear from you.
Yeah, so the survey, the housing survey that we've done years ago, we did a sort of a reconnaissance of what other communities have done in Ohio, and we found this condition desirability and usefulness study. I don't remember where it came from, but it was being used in other communities, so the state accepted it as a good way of doing the housing survey. So we adopted it many years ago, and so it's just a standard way, and you do a sort of a walk-around window survey of the housing, and you look at all the different conditions and you rate them. Obviously, that's a discretionary thing. People could disagree and argue on what the numbers are, but that's basically what we did. And we look at each, as Greg pointed out, there's different things that we look at. You know, whether the concrete's being maintained, whether the gutters are in place, whether the paint is peeling, et cetera. So we do that analysis, and then the state decides whether or not our survey was accurate.
Have you ever done one of these surveys that were turned down by the state?
No, we haven't.
I have a couple of questions along several lines. Do you get situations like this where you do a study where the intended use of the property is going to be something different from what is there already and not just a improvement of the
Yes.
existing structures?
Yes.
So that's not uncommon.
No.
Okay. Have you turned down people who have come to you asking to start the CRA process?
No, we basically, it's a local decision whether they want to do it or not. We're just functionaries who carry out what they ask to do.
Okay.
So I've got the resolution, if you want me to go through it, or how you want to proceed?
I want to address, go ahead, Jack.
Yeah, 7982 Festa Court. We have some people, you know, who are fairly active in the neighborhood, and we actually did our own survey. This is very recent, in the past several weeks, really. Leave 7982 Festa Court up there. Yeah.
There?
The first one.
Sorry.
It's the first one,
There you go.
right?
Left, lower left, is what you're talking about, Jack?
It's at lower level.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, this is what our survey showed. Overgrown bushes, entrance in disrepair, moss on walkways, side steps to lower entrance boarded up. I don't think you can see the side entrance here. Random wire roof to air conditioner unit. I'm not sure what that means, but water drainage issue. Cable box open, exposed wires. Drive in disrepair, and garage doors in disrepair. Now, that supports, I would think, the conclusions probably that ACDC went through and did the survey, and they ranked them in the 1 to 5 scale. We don't disagree with that. We'd like to be able to see the report and compare it to some of the things. But again, these are the conditions that existed several weeks ago or within the last month or so. My position is, and our position is that this is a condition that was self-inflicted. It occurred over a period of years. I grew up in Deer Park, and I respectfully disagree with you, Mr. Becerra, that I don't know what I'm talking about. I grew up in Deer Park. I'm a longtime resident of the township. I know this area. It isn't the greatest, but it's affordable housing, and a lot of people live there, and it was owned, and it was well kept, as I recall. There were occasional code violations or whatever, I suppose, but here we are about ready to embark on a big deal, and we don't have the information in front of us to consider it in a reasonable and rational way. So I'm again just asking you not to act on this today, but instead to allow everybody, yourselves included, and your administrative staff to review this and get it in perspective. And I also would like to see the agreement with Deer Park School District. There's nothing of record of that either.
Jack, it's all contingent on the school district. If they don't have the agreement, that's between the applicant
Well,
and the
Mr.
school
Becerra
district.
said last-
And we have a condition in the legislation that says, if you don't have the agreement, you don't get the CRA.
That's great, but Mr. Becerra said 2 weeks ago, or 3 weeks ago when we met, that agreement was in place. He said he had that agreement.
It is.
Well, then why can't we have a copy of it?
It's not an agreement between you and me. It's an agreement between us and the school board.
I'm asking for a copy of that. It's a public record.
Yeah, ask the school board. It has nothing to do with you.
Ask the school board?
It
So
has
you want me
nothing
to
to
go
do with
through the
you.
legislation?
Yeah, let me just address one thing that Jack said. Jack, if you bought these properties and your intent was to tear them down, would you be repairing all those